Zombies. As a genre, zombies in media have been hilariously oversaturated for years. Granted, there's some good reason for this. Some of the most iconic and memorable creations of the past 3 decades have at least something to do with the angry, diseased dead guys running all over the place trying to suck your brains out. The thing is, we've literally seen everything. We've seen headshot-only dead guys, we've seen runners with the sniffles, and we've seen mutant abominations beyond comprehension. And of course, we've seen the trope of, maybe the real monsters were the friends we made along the way. And the advent of the open-world survival genre of the early 2010s only served to exacerbate this problem.
It don't exacerbate things! What does that mean?
It's rare to find zombie games that actually use the setting to deliver a unique experience, which is why games like Left 4 Dead still have so many players playing it, even nearly 15 years after their creations. But what if I told you that one of the best zombie games ever made was a console exclusive? Well, former console exclusive. God, I love PC gaming. But yeah, it's Dead Rising. Now, trying to pinpoint exactly what made Dead Rising so great is admittedly quite difficult, especially considering not even Capcom themselves understood why it was so good, which explains why their attempts at making Dead Rising 5 was some janky Dark Souls ripoff. But that's why this video is here, because I'm going to tell you why it's so good, and why the original game was a genie in a bottle that every subsequent attempt by Capcom at a sequel could never hope to emulate. But first, allow me to introduce you to Enlisted, a free-to-play World War II multiplayer shooter on Xbox, PlayStation, and PC that balances exhilarating combat situations and tight gunplay with an authentic historical setting, arming you with hundreds of iconic tools and weapons and nail-biting vehicular combat to truly complement the gargantuan scale of the last Great War. From Moscow to Normandy to the Pacific, each campaign is unique and boasts their own squads with their own unique loadouts and equipment, all of which are completely and utterly customizable. And yes, I did say it was free. You can download it right this instant, free of charge, using the link in the description, where you can also claim 3 days of a premium account and a bundle of orders that can be used for squad and weapon upgrades. You literally get rewarded for grabbing a game for free. That's a no-brainer if I've ever seen one. Enlisted. Dead Rising is a game about a journalist taking advantage of a national tragedy for fame and fortune at the expense of literally everyone else.
Fantastic.
Developed by Capcom, you know, the company that these days can't seem to stop remaking their catalog of old games even if they really don't need to be remade. I've heard people say Dead Rising 1 is the next game they want to see remade. Dead Rising doesn't need to be remade. It's good. Great, even. I mean, it came out in 2006 and still looks this good. You are Frank motherfucking West, a dubious little creature who walks around like he dumped a couple of kilos of fecal matter into his pantaloons. I assume this has something to do with him jumping about 12 feet from a helicopter onto the roof of some Colorado mall. Also, yes, Frank bypassed a military blockade around town just so he could scoop up pictures of people getting brutally game-ended. In other words, he is literally the helicopter event from Project Zomboid. But yeah, as if it wasn't already abundantly clear from the beginning, zombies have taken over the town, with the only place of refuge for miles around being the massive fuck-off mall in the center of town. And this is one of the few pieces of zombie media that I can list off the top of my head where they actually cut the baggage and just straight up called them zombies.
Don't say that.
I mean, come on, they're dead. It's not like you're gonna hurt their feelings. Given that it came out in 2006, Dead Rising falls firmly under the banner of suspiciously detailed games from the mid-2000s that took advantage of an emergent technology to deliver a unique game experience. Because just look at the ridiculous amount of zombies on the screen. Granted, they are obviously more low poly than everything else in the game, but the game runs incredibly well, and this many zombies on the screen still presents a unique challenge you'd be hard-pressed to find anywhere else. I say challenge in the face of the obvious conundrum of the zombies obviously being brain-dead, and their arthritic speed, of course, but they make up for this through raw numbers and their insistence on taking a chunk out of your jugular at regular intervals. But the real threat isn't the zombies. The real threat is the absolute bonkers control scheme, which may seem innocuous at first, but when you find yourself casually dolphin diving 12 feet into a crowd of zombies while trying to juggle half a dozen middle-aged man-children into the safe house with you, it finally occurs to you that this is gonna be one of those games. And it really is. In spite of the otherwise gushing praise I'm about to give Dead Rising for being as unreasonably base as it is one of those games that seems to take absolute pleasure in trolling the player at every given opportunity. Which brings me to my next point. Dead Rising isn't a game about killing zombies. I mean, you absolutely can, incredibly efficiently, using just about anything you can get your hands on throughout the mall, from a baseball bat to a bloody bench, but mindlessly chopping down the legions of the dead has never been the point of Dead Rising. You see, the game has a time limit. You're given 72 hours to progress through the main story and take on side quests and random encounters as they come through their preset locations and times of day. You're informed of these developments through Otis, the senile old git on the other side of the walkie-talkie you lug around with you everywhere who has nothing better to do than watch CCTV footage and scream at you when you hang up on him to avoid having your heart eaten out. But he's the guy who tells you what's what and what's going down and where, and you're given a quest marker with a limited amount of time to investigate the area. Sometimes it's a bunch of nerds cowering in fear from the zombies they could realistically outrun at walking speed. Other times it's, oh Jesus Christ! Lugging these dolts around with you is simultaneously the most hilarious and most infuriating part of the game, because once you have them joined into your party, you have to escort them back to the safe house for a massive XP payout. The issue is, the survivors are just as brain dead as the zombies. No game will prepare you for parenthood like Dead Rising, because you will experience the first-hand horrors of having to hold the hands of 5 glue eaters as you try to navigate from point A to point B, all the while they insist on playing with the zombies, even when they have the capacities to avoid them entirely, and God forbid they get stuck in a hallway. So with all this being said, it's not at least halfway surprising that some people might start to go a little cuckoo crazy being stuck in this mental asylum of a mall, and you'd be absolutely correct. Psychopaths, people who have, only slightly, gone off the deep end. For some reason, every single one of them congregating in this one mall out of everywhere else in the town they could have started squatting in. Psychopaths are people who, you guessed it, are slightly obtuse in their manner of thinking. Dare I say, you could even call them unhinged. Psychopaths are optional boss battles that appear throughout the game just like the survivor missions do, except instead of rescuing them, you have to butcher them. Except for some reason, according to the Dead Rising universe, being absolutely off your rocker somehow gives you superpowers, including Dark Souls dodge rolls, expert understanding of guerrilla warfare tactics, and enough presence and charisma to run your own cult. The Psychopaths are probably the most memorable part of Dead Rising due to the evident care put into their designs, their physical appearances, and their personalities and backstories. Not one of them is indistinct. Every single one of them bears a unique appearance and heralds a unique theme to go along with them, complementing their respective movesets. Except for, you know, that one guy who almost dies by setting his crotch on fire.
I didn't mean to do that.
Unless you're as stupid as me, you can actually save him and he goes from boss battle geezer to helpless escort mission geezer like all the rest of them. And that's the only reason I remember he exists, because his boss battle took me like 2 seconds. In fact, the psychopaths in this game who I'd say are actually any challenge whatsoever, if we're really being honest with each other, is Carlito and Adam the Clown. But once you defeat Adam the Clown and Nicky's mini chainsaws, it's essentially game over. You can find a bunch of magazines scattered around the mall that apply Frank and his equipment with unique buffs depending on the magazine. So if you find those 3 magazines that increase the mini chainsaw's durability, you essentially have the highest DPS melee weapon in the game with nigh on infinite durability, allowing you to utterly mincemeat everyone you come across without even having to lift a finger at them. An insult, given how each of them take the time out of their days to set up a unique intro cutscene introducing their characters and establishing the basics of their fighting styles and gameplay. Okay, he's dead. And then you get these greasy mothers on the Humvee, who, other than being an absolute nuisance with a presence enough to induce intense PTSD into even the most hardened of Dead Rising player, are an absolute meme to fight, because the guy behind the driver's seat drives like Austin Powers, constantly ramming into nearby trees and getting himself stuck wherever and whenever possible, leaving him and the rest of his homies utterly exposed. And yet for some reason, no matter how many times you deal with them, they keep coming back for more. But obviously I can't talk about the convicts without mentioning how much of a banger their boss theme is. In fact, to hell with it. Dead Rising's soundtrack is an absolute banger. Some of it is copyrighted from Band of the Period, which I obviously can't play for you right this very moment. However, the homebrewed tracks sharing the same style go equally as hard. And when Dead Rising isn't forcing you to violently headbang to every boss theme in the game, the ambient mall music can ironically be quite relaxing in spite of the circumstances. It adds to the weird tonal dichotomy inherent to the game, while the setting and its story is otherwise a reasonably grounded take on the zombie outbreak scenario in an isolated Colorado mall, with characters who act appropriately to the situation with a hearty dose of suspense and intrigue thrown in for good mix. The other half of the game is an absolute acid binge, where the heaviest of guitar riffs are introduced for the battle between the world's creepiest photojournalist and Baz, age 63. I think in terms of raw gameplay, it's the progression system throughout the story that keeps me coming back to Dead Rising. Saving survivors, defeating bosses, and snapping pictures around the mall all earn you significant amounts of XP points, which in turn level you up and allow you to increase your basic stats like inventory size and health, as well as allowing you to learn new moves that significantly boost your combat potential, especially against the Psychopaths. It's all very well done and very organic as the difficulty drastically rises with the slight mutations of the zombies, and the escalation of the Psychopath's abilities as time progresses. And Frank himself is an absolute geezer. There's no complexities about his character, he's just a mildly entertaining geezer, a man so average that Capcom voluntarily made him uglier to become more relatable to American audiences. Also, as previously mentioned, the story is actually pretty good, though there's not much to spoil because it's a zombie game. I do recommend you play it for yourself. It's less on the depth of its plot and more on how it's structured, presented, directed, and how each character is cast and spectacularly performed by everyone involved. But yeah, to summarize, Dead Rising has the looks, aesthetics, atmosphere, and gameplay of a game that can only be created and perfected once. As much as I love Dead Rising 2, it does feel rather bloated in comparison, especially with the addition of the weapon combos. It does a good enough job at emulating the original's formula to stand on its own as a very good sequel, but it never had that kind of charm or flair unique to the original. I mean, you have a camera in Dead Rising, and you get to take pictures of people having very bad days or, oh, come on, Frank. Now's really not the time. It's a very minor mechanic in hindsight, but it is intrinsic to Frank's character and does very well at immersing you into the role of a Giga Chad journalist trying to uncover the truth behind the zombie outbreak. But yeah, that's Dead Rising. I wish I could say more about it, but it really has to be experienced to truly understand. The jank and some of the more otherwise dated aspects of the game I wouldn't say are hindrances, rather they help lend to the experience and the game's zany personality. No matter how insanely angry it can make me, it will never be enough to lower my estimations of it. Perversely, it kind of grows on me, and I wouldn't have Dead Rising any other way. And just in case you haven't been paying attention, Enlisted is an absolute banger. It's got tanks, it's got guns, what more do you need? Download now with the link in the description for 3 days premium access and a bundle of orders to upgrade your gear with, for free! Do it! Special shout out to the greatest patrons in the world. You are all true believers. And as always, thank you all for watching, and please, have a great day.